one of the busiest airports on the planet. Nearly 100 million passengers a year passing through its gates. And then, in a single month, it lost 2/3 of them. Not because of a financial crisis, not because of a pandemic, because of something most people in the West weren't paying close enough attention to. And here's the part that nobody's really talking about. This isn't just a story about an airport. It's a story about how fast the world you thought was stable can completely shift underneath you. And what happens to the people who had already built their lives around that world? Stay with this, because by the end, you're going to understand something about travel and about risk and about the way most of us plan our futures that most people are still missing. Dubai International Airport handled 95 million passengers in 2025. That's more than any other international airport on Earth. More than Heathrow. More than JFK. More than Singapore Changi. Dubai was the crossroads of the world. The place where a flight from Lagos connects to a flight to Melbourne. Where a businessman from London stops on his way to Mumbai. Where millions of people every single day trusted that this particular patch of sky would always be open. Then in March 2026, passenger numbers collapsed by 66%. Not 6%, not 16%, 66. 2/3 of the people who were supposed to be there weren't. Now, before you think this is just a news recap, pause for a second. Because there's a bigger question buried inside this story. And it's one that quietly applies to your life, whether you've ever set foot in Dubai or not. The reason for the collapse wasn't a mystery. A conflict involving Iran shut down airspace across the Middle East. Dubai International was hit by a drone strike on the very first day. It was February 28th. 4 staff members were injured. Operations were suspended. And then, for weeks, the airport that was supposed to welcome 100 million people this year was running at 38% of its normal capacity. Just 541 flight movements a day in a place designed for nearly 1,400. Think about what that looks like. A terminal built for density and movement and noise, suddenly quiet. Airlines pulling routes. Passengers rerouting through other hubs. And in the middle of all of it, the airport's CEO was on television talking about how they managed over 100 missile alarms, averaging about 3 per day, and still kept the doors open. That detail alone should stop you for a moment, because the airport didn't close. It kept operating. 6 million passengers still moved through it between late February and the end of April. More than 32,000 flights. 213,000 tons of cargo during a war, under missile alerts. And the world barely noticed because most people were watching something else. Here's what this does to the people who built their plans around Dubai. Not the tourists, the people who moved there. The digital nomads who chose the UAE because of its connectivity. The expats who took jobs with companies that depend on that east-west flight corridor. The entrepreneurs who set up in Dubai specifically because it sits at the exact center of a global network connecting Europe, Africa, South Asia, and East Asia. That positioning was the whole point. And for a stretch of weeks this year, that positioning became a liability. This is the part nobody puts in the lifestyle videos. Nobody talks about what happens when the destination you chose, the city you relocated to, the hub you built your freedom around, ends up inside a conflict zone, even temporarily. And here's the thing. Dubai is recovering. The airspace reopened at the start of May. Emirates has already restored 96% of its global network. The CEO of Dubai Airport says they're in a recovery phase further ahead than any competing hub. He's still aiming for 100 million passengers, just pushed to 2027 instead of this year. The fundamentals are still there. The ambition is still there. But what changed is the awareness. People who had never thought about geopolitical risk as a personal travel concern are now thinking about it. Because when your layover airport is processing missile alarms while you're trying to connect a flight, geopolitics stops being something that happens on the news and starts being something that happens to you. And if you're someone who thinks about travel as more than a holiday, If you're someone who has ever looked at a map and imagined yourself living differently, working from somewhere else, building a life that isn't locked to one city or one commute or one version of yourself, this moment asks you something important. Where are you building your flexibility? Not which city do you want to move to, but how diversified is your actual freedom? Because the people who navigated this best weren't the ones who had one perfect plan. They were the ones who understood that no single hub, no single route, no single destination is guaranteed. And they had already built some version of a backup into their lives. A second passport, a remote income that doesn't depend on a specific geography, connections across more than one region. Dubai is not finished. Anyone saying that is misreading the story. The infrastructure is world-class. The ambition is real. And the recovery is already happening faster than most predicted. London, Mumbai, and Jeddah are still the top routes. India is still the largest source market by far. The architecture of global connectivity that Dubai built over the last 2 decades doesn't disappear because of one brutal quarter. But the 66% drop is a number worth sitting with. Not out of fear, out of clarity. Because most people who dream about traveling more or living abroad or building a life that feels less stuck, they spend a lot of time imagining the upside, the freedom, the novelty, the version of themselves on the other side of the decision. And they spend very little time asking what happens if the world moves while they're in the middle of executing the plan. The people who move through the world with the most ease aren't the ones who pick the right city. They're the ones who stop treating any single place as the whole answer. Dubai will be back. The question is whether you'll be ready for whatever comes next, wherever that is.